I'd personally like to take just a moment to express what a pleasure it's been working with Safran and partnering with them over for nearly 5 years now. And I really appreciate being able to collaborate together and putting on this joint summit. The partnership between us has been fun. It started back in 2021, and it's been a really enjoyable, rewarding journey. And with so many exciting things planned, really looking forward to building this partnership going forward. And more importantly, as a team, we're really thrilled that so many of you can join today. The numbers are going up as I'm speaking, which is really exciting. And so welcome everyone as you join. Just a couple of good to know sort of housekeeping items. All the sessions will be recorded and they will be individually posted on our YouTube channels / websites. And everyone in the event today, registered for the event, will receive an email with a variety of instructions on how to access the videos and various other things that pertaining to this summit. When will the recordings be available? I would imagine they'll be available next week. We'll at least try and get them out for next week. So next thing is questions. We absolutely want questions. However, there's a lot of us on the call today. So please don't hesitate. Please type in the questions. We will try and answer everything we can, but for those we don't get to, we will keep the script and we will get to the questions and we will post the answers. So everything will be answered, even if we can't do it live today. This is a new one, closed caption. So some of you on the call today, English might not be the first language, and it just might be the way I speak. You can't understand what I'm saying. So Teams does have a closed caption facility function, which I didn't know about. And so we're going to post instructions of that into the chat if you want to read along rather than listen over the sessions today. So we're going to start with a round of introductions. So you've heard from myself. I'm next going to introduce Doug Oldfield, and one of the co-founders and directors here at Palisade. And following Doug, I'm going to introduce Jürgen Asland, who's the head of global sales for Safran. So now I'm going to introduce Doug. Doug, I'm sure will love me for saying, is a veteran in this niche area of QRA and QRSA. You've got nearly 20 years experience in this space, made up of time back at Palisade with myself, and now here at the Ferryfield Group. And over these years, Doug has delivered many thousands, a couple of thousand presentations on this subject, as well as numerous training courses and consulting engagements. And over the time, he, as well as myself and other members of the Ferryfield team, have really realized the need to educate individuals and companies around this subject. And we're all passionate about spreading the word and educating. And in fact, Doug was instrumental in putting together the Safran Fundamentals training course, which I can see many of the familiar names that have attended the course. So Doug may well be familiar to you. So that's enough for me for now. And I'm going to hand over to Doug to run through a bit of an introduction to the Ferryfield Group.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Craig, for the introduction. I had to laugh. You said that here at Palisade rather than here at Ferryfield, so obviously kind of reverting back to
because it's written
to older times at one point. So let me share out my desktop then, and I will get started with a little kind of introduction to Ferryfield. So let me just find the share option. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Okay. Yeah, I'm following on from Craig's words. I was just going to say a few kind of words about Ferryfield and what we do and who we are, just so you know a little bit more about us, and then I'm going to pass back over to Safran to say some words as well. So I guess, as Craig says, Ferryfield, we've been working with Safran now for nearly 5 years. And Craig and I used to work together at Palisade, the people who used to make the at-risk software before they got acquired by Lumivero. We've worked together for many years, and actually we also went to school together as well. So we've known each other a very, very long time. Craig had more hair when I knew him at first. I had probably quite a lot less hair, actually, bizarrely. But we've kind of, you know, we're obviously very, very good friends, and When kind of things kind of all start to change around at Palisade, we looked to see what we could do together, and the idea of Ferryfield was born. And of course, the name is a kind of mix of Craig Ferry and Doug Oldfield. And from our time at Palisade, what we very much kind of saw and understood across a whole kind of raft of different industries was that we very much believed in the power of quantitative risk analysis, but there was also a little bit of a gap in the market in terms of capabilities of our clients at the time. And so what we wanted to do was to really kind of set up a company that was very much focused on and dedicated to quantitative risk analysis. So what we have a team of trainers and consultants, and of which I'm one of them myself. And what we do, we deliver all sorts of training courses on Safran. We also do lots of consulting engagements as well, helping kind of large, big kind of implementations of the software and kind of liaising between the users who want to start using it and make best use of the tools, but also then with the IT team understanding how best to deploy it and so on. So we've been doing a lot of that sort of thing over the last few years in particular. And as a side said, we're one of Safran's platinum partners. It might actually be called premium partner. I can't remember actually, but the bottom line is that we're very, very, very closely linked with Safran. So that when we set up Ferryfield, what we really wanted to do was to find other companies that we wanted to work with that we liked, because obviously when we're doing business, you spend a lot of time doing business, so it's really important to work with people that you like and companies that you believe in the product. So we'd heard lots of good things about Safran, and we met up with them a few times, really liked what we saw, and since then we've just been a really close-knit team, I suppose. We deliver all the Safran fundamentals training courses. We do lots of other training and consulting on their behalf. We also act as a reseller and a distributor as well, so we also sell the software as well. So although I'm not a Safran employee, it's fair to say that we are very, very, very tightly linked, and they're a really, really good group of people. And of course, good group of people doesn't mean anything unless they've got the product to back it up. And I think one of the really exciting things about the tool is just how good it is and how passionate we can be. As I said, it's important to believe what you're working with, and for myself at least. And for lots of other people, which is why you're all on the call, I'm sure, is that Safran is just such a great tool from a consulting perspective, training perspective, and obviously for end users as well. And although Ferryfield isn't a massive organisation by any means, our consultants and trainers have got a whole lot of experience. So over the years, we've worked with many different organisations in a whole load of different industries, environments, types of use of quantitative risk analysis, and some of the logos are on the screen. So although as we're a small organisation, we very much kind of punch above our weight, and so I guess that's probably it for introduction from me. You'll be seeing a bit more of me in a little while, talking about some tips and tricks to get the most out of Safran risk. But I think for now at least, Craig, back over to you to introduce Jorgen.
Will do. Thanks, Doug. Yes, it's my pleasure now to introduce Jorgen Asland. So Jorgen's been with Safran now for 14 years, working in a variety of positions such as a consultant and trainer, sales support for Safran Project and Safran Planner. And now Jorgen heads up the global sales team, but he's also responsible for growing and the business development of Safran in the Nordic regions himself. So Jorgen, kind of echoing what Doug said about himself and what I mentioned about Ferryfield as well, Jorgen's also passionate about helping people and educating people about the subject, and more specifically Safran clients, to get the most value out of the Safran solutions. Prior to joining Safran, Jorgen worked as an ERP consultant delivering Microsoft Dynamics solutions, and yeah, it's been a real pleasure working with Jorgen over the years, as well as the rest of the team. And so now I'm going to hand the session over to Jorgen to talk to you a bit about Safran.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, so I can just echo what's been said by both you and Doug here. We've been working together for 5 years, Safran together with Ferryfield, and it's been real fun to see how quickly Ferryfield has grown to become a really strong partner with Safran, both delivering consulting training, reselling, and as a distributor of Safran products. So very happy to be here and to say a couple of words about Safran on this event. So for anyone joining us today who's unfamiliar with Safran or doesn't know who Safran is, thought I could just give a quick introduction to who we are. We were established in 1997 in Stavanger in Norway. We're a software company developing and selling software primarily in the project sphere, of course. We started out with a project planning tool called Safran Project, which is very much aimed at planning, scheduling big, complex projects. And about 10 years ago, we launched Safran Risk, which has been a great success for Safran internationally. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we launched Safran Risk Manager. So all these products very focused on the project sphere of any companies delivering complex, big projects. In addition to developing software, we also do deliver training, support, consulting type of services. So we are more than just a software company. We're also quite a few of us subject matter experts who've been working in project either as schedulers or risk analysts or in different positions around in projects. Yeah, we develop our products in close collaboration with our customers. So we always try to stay close to our customers and work with them as partners. And happy to say that some of the customers who were with us in '97 when we started are still with us today. So, and I think that's why folks that we are staying close to our customers. We are developing our products in accordance with their needs. We also try to stay close to the industry best practices, for example, from PMI or ACEE. Yeah. All right, with that, looking forward to a very exciting event. It's been a while since we've had one of these online events, so really look forward to see the presentations coming up today. Oh, yeah, I think you're muted, Craig.
Good spot. Good spot. That wouldn't have been good. Yeah, so it's now my pleasure to introduce one of our guest speakers today, Michael Gladwin. He's from MACE, based out in Riyadh, still enjoying the warm weather. It's getting chilly over this side of the world. Michael is a chartered quantity surveyor and risk expert. He specialises in high-stake capital projects across multiple sectors. Michael has 20 years' experience in this area and brings unmatched insight into the cost, schedule, risk, value management, and strategic planning. Today, Michael's presentation title is Parametric Uncertainty Modelling using Safran Risk and Excel. So, Michael, I'm now going to hand the session over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Really good to be here. Really good to be in such good company. Been using Safran Risk for quite a while, pretty much since it came out to some extent, alongside other products. But I'm finding that Safran is rapidly becoming the leader in this area, and because it offers so much. What I'd like to talk about today is I've called it parametric uncertainty modeling using Safran and Safran Risk and Excel. It's as much about the concept of what I'm talking about with uncertainty modeling as it is about the interrelation that you can have between Safran and Excel. And what I'm going to go through today is not complex, but I hope it'll just spark some ideas amongst you all as to how we can use Safran Risk in different areas and in different stages of our projects. If I just go to the right page, then I'm good. Can you see my? I'm not sharing the right screen. I'm not sharing a screen.
Not the moment, Michael.
That's great. Let's go. It's a good start, isn't it?
There we go.
Perfect. There we go.
Perfect.
Right. Yeah. So, what I'm going to go through is talking about uncertainty modeling in general, talking about layers of complexity in uncertainty modeling, the types of uncertainty that I've used in my exercise, how you can bring Safran and Excel together to create this, how you create the model, import the risks, do the mapping, get some outputs that you can learn some good information from. The challenge that I had is I had a relatively early stage integrated master schedule. It was about 5,000 line items, and we wanted to learn more about the schedule and learn more about the levels of confidence we can have in it, such as what are the possible critical paths, how robust is the schedule. We wanted to stress test it in some way. Are there any areas that we need to focus on now during the development of the IMS? Should we look at rescheduling some of the component parts of the schedule? Is there a particular project or activity that's driving much of the delay elsewhere in the schedule? So we wanted to use Safran to do this, but bearing in mind this was at a quite early stage of the project, so we needed to consider what's the best way of doing this. Now we all know that when you put a schedule model together, you have to include both uncertainties and risks. But the split between those uncertainties and risks will change over time, depending on the level of schedule detail and the level of project knowledge that you've got. In the early stages of a project, you'll be dealing mainly in uncertainty. Even if you have risks, they're probably uncertainties that are phrased as risks, such as supplier availability or market pricing or design completion dates and so on and so forth. There probably are mainly uncertainties. As you develop through the project, you will develop the schedule and you will develop your risks, and you'll be able to identify a risk which has an impact on an activity. But in the early stages of the project, that's unlikely. Having said that, it's not. It's perfectly possible for you to add risks into this process as well. So I'm going to talk mainly in terms of uncertainties, but you can add risks as well. But if you do that, be careful of gaps and overlaps. Be careful that you are not adding on risk on top of uncertainty or having risk instead of uncertainty that doesn't cover everything. But in this exercise, I've focused just on uncertainty. So when we talk about putting uncertainty into a model, what do we do? Do we use one size fits all? Do we put plus or minus 10% across everything? Or do we get more detailed? Well, plus or minus 10% across everything. So I've seen people do it. It's a way of quickly stress testing your model, but I've also seen people do that. And no matter how much you caveat the exercise, somebody will run with the answer that you've got and think that you've done a quantitative analysis. And it's just not good enough at that stage. Or you can get a little bit more detailed. You can use targeted quick risk in some way. You can attach a low uncertainty, medium and high uncertainty to different activities. That's perfectly acceptable. Safran's great in doing that because you have these levels of uncertainty you can attach in different places. But if you've got a 5,000 line item schedule, it gets quite unwieldy to try and do that. Plus, I wanted to be able to have some better demonstration of why I've chosen certain levels of uncertainty. So you can go to activity-specific uncertainty. 5,000 line items, that gets a bit difficult to do that. So maybe I can look at some sort of parameters that are going to guide my levels of uncertainty. So that's the line that I went down. Let's think about the different reasons why there might be uncertainty, and let's see if we can quantify those in some way and attach them to the activities in the schedule. To give us a bit of to bring this to life a little bit, let's think about a project example, a program example. And in my program example here, I've got 7 projects. And just to show the differences between them, let's say we've got Project Knife, for instance. It's a very simple project, but that can have issues with permitting. Or you've got Project Fork, which is more complex than Project Knife, fewer permitting issues, or Project Spoon, which is much more straightforward. It's probably the simplest project in the portfolio. And then you've got Project Kitchen Sink. Now, this one has the most content, pretty much everything is in it. So scope is particularly of a concern with Project Sink. And then you've got other projects like Project Can Opener. That's complex, lots of moving parts. It's been known to fail testing and commissioning, usually stops working when you most need it. And then you've got Project Wine Cooler, which is a simple project, but it's a vanity project. So that one could be susceptible to a bit of scope creep. And then you've got Project Dishwasher, which is complicated, but I think we're best off leaving that to our German specialists to do that. So we'll get that one done outside. So considering these projects, they are all subtly different and may attract different levels of uncertainty in different ways. So how would I classify those types of uncertainty? Well, first of all, I looked at estimating uncertainty. There's your usual estimating and error, duration variance, market capacity, those sorts of things. Then you've got scope uncertainty. Then you've got complexity uncertainty. If there's a particular project that's more complex than another one, that's got a certain level of uncertainty to it. The potential for design development might vary between projects, between activities. Procurement is a bit special because procurement is usually shorter durations, but if they fail, they can almost double potentially if you're not careful. Then you get permitting and approvals are quite special in terms of those activities. And fit out, that was a particular area of the schedule that I was considering, which needed a layer of uncertainty of its own. And then we've got third-party construction as well. What I did is I took each of these areas of uncertainty and I assigned a range for each of these areas of uncertainty. And I assigned a 5-point range for each of these. So we've got a very low to a very high layer of uncertainty for each of these types of uncertainty. And these formed a triangular distribution when they're input into Safran. You'll see those top three there, the estimating and scope and complexity uncertainty, are all relatively low amounts of uncertainty. But that's because the way I'm going to do it in my model is I'm going to stack them. Some of these are going to stack and some of them aren't going to stack. So most of my construction durations will have estimating and scope and complexity uncertainty. So I needed to make sure that I wasn't overdoing the levels of uncertainty in those areas. But for something like permitting, that's usually a shorter duration activity, but it has a greater propensity to vary from the assumptions that are made in the schedule. So that's where I have higher ranges of uncertainty there. So now when I've created this table, I've actually created 45 risks that I needed to import into Safran. So this is where I start to use Excel together with Safran for getting that import and export into Safran. Here, it makes it easy to do bulk updates. I can do the updates in Excel and import it into Safran. I can generate data based on other calculations. And what's great about the interface between Excel and Safran is Safran takes what it needs from the Excel import and ignores the rest. So you can use the rest of the spreadsheet to do other calculations and other development of your inputs and keep it all in the same file and then just upload that the meat of what Safran needs into the model. It's easier sometimes to see the bigger picture in Excel. It's better to get buy-in to the analysis because you can share the Excel, you can get input from other Safran users into the Excel sheets. And just a quick tip here, whenever you do this, whenever you are going to import stuff into Safran, always export the sheet from Safran first, and then update the sheet and then put it back in again. The sheet does get updated every now and then as Safran updates, and it's always best to take the latest form of the import and export from Safran. So the steps that I took, I would import and create uncertainty risks in Safran. I would export the risk mapping sheet from Safran. I extend it and create drop-downs for each source of uncertainty. I'm going to show you the risk model if we have time at the end of this presentation and how that works. Create the uncertainties that matches the Safran syntax. And again, by doing that, even though it's a formula in my Excel spreadsheet, Safran will take the result of that formula when you import it into Safran. Then you've got to do a lot of sense checking, because once you're doing this, especially with the process that I'm doing here, there's a danger of overdoing some of the uncertainties or having an inadvertent impact on some of your activities. So within my sheet, I approximate the uncertainty impact on activities, and then you have to check and you have to check again to see that this is actually making sense the way you're doing it. As I said before, once I've imported the risks into Safran, and I say they're risks, although they are risks that are representing uncertainty, This is what it looks like in Safran. The reason I can't use the estimate uncertainty function within Safran is you can only attach one estimate uncertainty item to an activity. And as I said, I'm going to stack some of these. I'm going to have multiple levels of uncertainty on some items. So I couldn't use the estimate uncertainty methodology within Safran to do this. Then I need to map the risks. Now, everything that I'm doing in my Excel model can be done in Safran. Safran's got a great interface for mapping your risks to your activities. I just found when I did it in my 5,000 line item model that 45 risks by 5,000 lines got a little bit unwieldy. And although the functionality is there within Safran to filter the activities and to filter the risks, because of the way that I'm doing it, it was a bit awkward to do, and I found it better to do it in Excel. What Safran also does, though, is it will give you the approximate impact of your various uncertainties or risks that I've attached to a single item. At the bottom, that's great functionality. I've approximated it in my Excel model, but it's not as good as the approximation that Safran does here. But you'll see how by doing it in the Excel model, I can quite easily sort and check what are the biggest ones, what are the smallest ones. My Excel model my Excel import for my mapping, there's a couple of screenshots of it here. These first four columns, the activity ID, the description, the duration, and the map risks, those are the only four columns that Safran is interested in. Everything else that I do across here is my own business, and it helps me to create this statement here that gets put into the mapping when it gets imported into Safran. So here I can say that my project knife design has estimating and scope and complexity and design development uncertainty of different levels, and it's all concatenated together in this statement, which then gets imported into Safran. Just a little side note here. When you're concatenating, I came across the text join function in Excel, which is an excellent function for concatenating these sorts of statements. It allows you to concatenate them with a delimiter in between, but only where that delimiter is needed, which is exactly what we need. I then have on towards the right-hand side of the sheet, I've got approximations of the sort of impact that would be both in terms of percentage and in terms of days. So I can check to see whether I'm overdoing the percentages or overdoing the days according to some of my my activities. Now, once I've done this, once I've created this spreadsheet, I imported into Safran. I did add some correlation because of the sort of disaggregation that I'm doing and the types of uncertainties and the single sources of information that I'm using. But then I ran the model, and you get the normal information that you get out of a model. You can look at the confidence level in meeting the completion date of any one of the projects in your integrated master schedule. You can see how they are impacted by other projects in the schedule. You can see what the P80 is. You can see what the P50. You can look at durations, and you can look at completion dates, and you can look at sensitivity. So in this particular example here, in my project kitchen sink, completion date was delayed by 189 days. The duration of kitchen sink was only 144 days delayed. So something's pushing the beginning of the project kitchen sink there. Within my program, there's a certain linkage there. And we could trace that back going through the critical path analysis if we wanted to. But the other thing to get out of this is the sensitivity analysis. And another fantastic thing I think in Safran is this sensitivity analysis. It steps it up from the simple correlation of risks to outputs, and you can actually see what impact a particular risk has on the outcome of your project, the focus project that you're looking at. Now, one of the challenges that I did have here is that these were the sensitivities to the completion of project kitchen sink, and you'll see here there are permitting level 5 and permitting level 4 were here, and design development level 3 and design development level 4. I wanted to try and simplify this some way, so I've used quite soft language here, and I said here I combined the activities. I actually added them together. I added the permitting uncertainty level 5 and 4 together to give total level of permitting. Now, I know that's not strictly speaking correct because it's equivalent of adding your P80s together, which is not strictly speaking correct. But it does give us an indication of those things that are in the schedule that gave most, had most impact on the completion date for your project. Doug and I had quite detailed and in-depth discussions on how we can fix this, and that there is a potential way of fixing this by using overriding single risks for each of my areas of uncertainty and then having an override. But the complexity of that meant that the rest of the system didn't work. So I'm living with this for now, and I think it's an acceptable way of showing what the biggest areas of influence are on the project for now. So when you come to present the results, I presented the results of my various different projects within, in this sort of a format. So I was able to say, for a particular project, I can present the completion date, the confidence in the completion date, the spread of completion date, what the P80 is looking like in the P50 and the P20, what the main areas of influence over that were. And although I said at the beginning that I didn't include any risks in the analysis, I did have a risk register. Obviously, I had a risk register, and I looked at the risk register to determine whether I felt that those risks were covered by the ranges of uncertainty that I had allowed for in my analysis. I was content that they were, but notwithstanding that, it was important to know what were the biggest risks that I considered when I was making those judgments. So still alongside each project, I wanted to show what the major impacts were, what the major risks were, and then what the outcome of the model was. And of course, alongside undertaking this activity, there's all those side benefits you get. It's those discussions with the schedulers, it's modifying the schedule, it's having a discussion about the way projects are linked together, and maybe modifying those, and having that to and fro that you have in the development of the IMS. It's all the side benefits, or maybe even the main benefits of undertaking this activity, not just getting this result, but this result did influence significantly the program that I was working on. So just finally, in the quick presentation here, there's a few caveats. I mean, although the process that I'm talking about here is quick, it's flexible, it's more tailored than quick risk. It's straightforward to explain the results, and it uses available data. It does provide insight into the schedule, and you can add risks to it, but it might be a bit broad brush. The absence of risks means I'm not actually getting any insight into the specific impact of any risks that I've got. And there's a potential that I might be double counting if risks are included. But I think it was a very, very useful exercise for us to go through. What I'll do now, I'll just show you some of that spreadsheet that I was working on. So, for instance, if I come here and show you the show you the spreadsheet, this was the spreadsheet that I used for the mapping. And what you'll see is you've got these first 4 columns here. This is the thing that Safran is most interested in. It's interested in the activity, the description, any duration uncertainty, and any mapped risks associated with that. I first of all extended the spreadsheet by including durations and the type of activity, because sometimes when I did this on the other activity, I had hammocks and all sorts of different types of activities. I couldn't, in order to do this, I added another tab. So Safran doesn't mind if you add another tab into this spreadsheet. I copied my activities across from Safran and did a bit of a lookup table to add this information to my sheet here. And then going along, I then had my ranges of uncertainty that I could choose. So I could add a level of permitting uncertainty, or I could add a level of approval uncertainty to a particular activity. And this all adds to the concatenated input here that goes into Safran. It's very easy to do, and it's very easy then to share with other people that these are the levels of uncertainty that I've associated with activities. I can quickly search in the same way as you can within Safran for my construction activities, and then see, are these all sort of roughly in alignment with each other? As I said, the project kitchen sink has got an estimating uncertainty of 5 because it's such a big and unwieldy project, whereas Project Knife has got an estimating uncertainty of 1 because it's much more easy to forecast how long it will take to build that project. Project Dishwasher here has none of that because it's got this third party level of uncertainty that I've associated with that type of activity. And you could look at the same things with for instance, permitting. And this was very useful with my the exercise that I did, because there was consistency in the way things were labelled within the schedule, but sometimes it wasn't totally consistent. So I'd have to search around for the different terminology for the different types of activities that I needed to assign uncertainty to. Once I've done that, once I've assigned these levels of uncertainty and concatenated the right statement here, I did also want to check, as I said, what the impact of these were going to be. So here I've got a approximate percentage impact, and I can sort that from my largest to the smallest to see which were the ones that are giving me the most impact. Am I overdoing these? You'll see a lot of these larger ones here about permits and approvals, but in order to see if I'm perhaps overdoing this, I also need to see what that is in terms of days. So here I can see that some of these are large impacts, but they are not that great in terms of days. But this one with kitchen sink here, it's turning out to be quite a large impact, and there's quite a large duration. So I'm adding 117 days to this project for this uncertainty. Is this right? I can go back and challenge myself as to whether I've maybe overdone this 14% for a level 5 of estimating uncertainty, and I can modify the sheet accordingly. But once I've done that and I import it into Safran, I've got just checking on my time here. I've got my Safran model here to see what the model's looking like. Here's my very simple model. Very proud of the fact it's the only time I've ever come across a schedule where it's only got 2 schedule warnings. And that's because I wrote it myself. If you find a scheduler that can do this for you, keep them close, because it's awesome when you get that. So I've got my 2 schedule warnings because it's a very standard sort of schedule that I've put together. 10 activities in each project, all linked together with finish to start links, and there's some of the projects are linked together across here. I've got my project risks that we've spoken about. So there's 45 project risks in here. I've done them all with a trigen with the various levels of uncertainty that I described in the presentation. And then we've got the mapping sheets here. So all of this now represents the mapping that I imported from my Excel sheet. And this is where you can look at what that schedule impact looks on an individual item. So I could look at in here, maybe in a bit more detail, at kitchen sink construction, if I wanted to see whether I was adding too much on because of this. And then when I run the analysis, I can then do the sensitivity analysis, pull out the key information I want. I've got another spreadsheet that brings together the sensitivity analysis, and I can then run through the critical path map, all the sort of things that you can do with Safran in order to dig into your project a little bit more, find out if it's doing what you expect it to do and if there's any anomalies there. So that's my quick run through of parametric modeling, the way I applied it in principle to the specific project that I have. I mean, I can't, which was more complex, but the principles here I think should work quite well. So at that point, I'll hand back over to Gustavo or Craig.
Yeah, we've got a few questions for you first, Michael, in the Q&A. But thank you very much first of all. That was really enjoyable, and it was fun thing to kind of go down some rabbit holes with you talking about that when you get them prepared. So yeah, we've got a few questions for some of the attendees, if that's all right. So let's go in order. So first of all, what have we got? So someone has said, should we create only one risk item in Safran as duration uncertainty rather than creating multiple uncertainties? Now, I could probably answer that myself, but have you got any thoughts on that, Michael?
Well, I think it becomes, well, the next question, if you have the one item relating to duration uncertainty, what is the range? What range do you give to that one? And my whole methodology was around being able to give different ranges of uncertainty to different items. And the methodology that I wanted to do that was to break it down into these different reasons for uncertainty and then stacking them or allocating them according to this. This is a little bit aligned with the solution that you and I were coming up to, and one duration uncertainty and maybe overriding in different areas for different levels of uncertainty for different items. But yeah, I think yeah, go on, Doug.
And I was going to say, no, I absolutely agree. And just to be kind of clear, you don't have to do it this way. Obviously, Michael's kind of put a lot of kind of time and thought into this, but you can just have one line item for duration uncertainty. And in fact, it's one of the things we'll be looking at in my presentation in a little while, kind of how we can go about doing that. But I think what Michael's kind of technique here allows you to do is very much to narrow down all the different sources of that. Whereas if you just have one line item for duration uncertainty, it's much harder to kind of break out and do your kind of root cause analysis as to where that's coming from. So next question then. So what was the basis of your percentage ranges of uncertainty for your 90 for your nine items, Michael?
It was largely based on experience and past exercises that I've undertaken. It was why we left the ranges quite high for approvals and uncertainties, approvals and permits, because they tend to expand greatly from their original durations, but also the ranges of uncertainty that we would get from our estimators when we ask them what is the level of confidence they have in their schedules. It's very important to have the conversations with the people who put the schedules together to understand from them how confident they are in the figures that they've put into their estimate, because it could well be that they've been quite conservative in the figures that they've put, and you might want to add a not so much pessimism, because they've already sort of included a lot of pessimism in their schedules. So you need to understand where they're standing and adjust your ranges of uncertainty in accordance. So there's not a standard.
Thank you. There's no hard and fast rules with these things, unfortunately. Life would be easier if there were sometimes, but it does often come down to kind of expert judgment. And of course, there's a very kind of famous quote that I'm very fond of trotting out from time to time, which is that all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And what we're always trying to do is to make our models kind of pragmatic and as realistic as possible, so we can hopefully make some better decisions with them. But it's important not to confuse what we put in our model with what's actually going to happen, because that's not going to be guaranteed by any means. So the next question then, are these uncertainties applied on a program with multiple projects running in parallel?
Yes. I mean, the uncertainties are uncertainties associated with the activities within the schedule. And if some of those projects are running in parallel, that's fine. It means that the logic that is in that model will still be respected. So the logic doesn't necessarily dictate the levels of uncertainty that are put on here, if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. So someone had asked, and I was waiting for this question to come up. I might have asked it myself, actually, if someone else hadn't done it. But we've had a request. Is it possible to share the Excel risk import sheet, please? So I don't know, how would you feel about sharing maybe a high-level version of what you put together, Michael? Maybe rather than putting you on the spot, we'll discuss that with Michael offline. If we can share it, we will do. But if we can't, yeah, we might not. So next question is why all 41 risks were 100% probability?
It's because there are uncertainties. It's because although I put them in as risks, if I could have put them in as uncertainties and applied them to applied more than one uncertainty to an activity, I would have done it that way. But they're all 100% because they are all uncertainties and they range from negative to positive. It's not, they don't have an opportunity for not occurring. They're always going to be present.
So someone's asked about what's the risk type. So we'll maybe I'll try and cover that off in my presentation rather than asking Michael to do that. But there's lots of different risk types available in Safran. I'll try and cover off a couple of those in my presentation. Then someone else has asked, in terms of the kind of the benefit of doing this. So what they're saying is that you could, and again, there's not necessarily just one particular way to skin this particular cat. It's important to note that just because Michael's doing it this way, you might have a different way to work better for you. But what someone's asking is you could have 3 different levels of uncertainty applied sensibly across multiple activities. And then if you added a whole load of discrete risks, you might get more insight into the risk profile. Now, I'm guessing that's kind of to do with the kind of the early stage nature of the schedule. But I don't know if you've got any kind of thoughts about that, Michael.
I think that you're right. It does come back to that early stage part of the project. If I had discrete risks that I could put onto discrete activity items, activities, then that's obviously the best way to go. I mean, if you do have that level of detail and you can put it to the specific activities, then it gives you an insight into the impact that risk has in the rest of your schedule. But at the stage of the project that I was at this point in time, we didn't have that level of detail. So you have market uncertainty risk, or you have design errors and emissions risks, and so on and so forth. When you look at which activities you're going to apply them to, maybe my example here, it's not a great example because I've grouped it even at a higher level, but within my integrated master schedule that I had, it was very hard to see which activities, which risks would apply to if you tried to link them in that way, because we were just at too early a stage. I'm not saying that we shouldn't attach discrete risks. I think we should if we can justify it.
Absolutely, and it's important to note here as well that these risk models should be a kind of almost like a living, breathing organism, that you don't just do it at the start of the project and then shut it away in a drawer or indeed in your SQL database and then not look at it again. The idea is that as things mature, as your scope kind of maturity increases, as new risks come in, these things should be worked on and throughout the whole life of the project, not just in the bidding stage, but all the way through execution. And of course, when we do that, and again, this is something maybe I'll try and tick off a little bit in my presentation, we've then got ways of being able to plot the progress of these different projects over time, rather than just seeing it as very much a standalone single point in time. So the final question we've got here is probably not for you, Michael, unless you've been having conversations with Safran that we don't know about. But we've got a question here which is really around AI and whether because AI is something which is we're obviously hearing lots and lots and lots and lots about in lots of different areas. It's a question really about what Safran's doing about AI in the future, and I think maybe we're going to be having a presentation from Fred Dalberg, who's the Safran risk product manager later on. So maybe if he's got time, he can pick that one up. I don't want to answer on Safran's behalf. I know there's been a few kind of questions and discussions and so on around that, but I think maybe that's best parked till later on. So I'd just like to, I guess, Craig, do you want to just kind of wrap up this and tell us what's going to happen next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Doug. And thanks again, Michael, for excellent presentation. Really clear, concise walkthrough. And I love the kitchen collective analogy. I'm sure it's going to be used by someone on the call somewhere to explain the same thing. So we now have a 5-minute break. We're going to return in 5 minutes for the session from Chris Ritson. So it's a 5-minute break now.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.